unironically, that the clock was ticking not just for me, but for the entire organization. He wore a suit as expensive as his arrogance, a tight, navy wool blend that looked like it confined his ego more than his body. His voice, always booming, seemed designed to drown out any sound of actual work being done. At exactly 9:12 a.m., he leaned across the conference table, his manicured finger tapping a paper he slid toward me. The number printed in bold at the bottom was $50. A raise of $50 per year. 16 years of midnight deployments, emergency rollbacks, lost weekends, and 2 stress-related chest pain hospital trips, all reduced to the cost of a mediocre dinner. I stared at the page, my eyes meticulously tracing the zero, searching for a phantom digit that simply wasn't there. Darren watched, a triumphant, self-satisfied grin plastered on his face. "We're keeping it fair across the board, Soren," he declared. Fair. The word tasted like ash. My last 3 integration rollouts had single-handedly prevented our flagship logistics platform from collapsing under federal compliance audits. I had held the system together with nothing but code, caffeine, and sheer will, while executives like Darren cashed their 6-figure bonuses. And now, I was supposed to nod gratefully. I raised an eyebrow instead, a gesture honed over years of quiet defiance. "Is this final?" He leaned back, folding his arms across his broad chest, the move of a man who believed he was delivering an elegant checkmate. "Okay, if you're not happy, the door is over there." The room went surgically silent. My pulse, rather than spiking in panic, settled into a slow, steady rhythm. The air sharpened, forcing each detail into stark focus. The gleam of the brushed metal light fixture, the faint scuff on the glass wall, Darren's smug reflection. I didn't argue, I didn't beg. I didn't throw the paper in his face. Instead, I slid the paper back across the table, stood, and adjusted my blazer. "Understood. Consider this your final lesson," he added, unable to resist one last condescending jab. He thought he'd won. He thought this was the climax. But Darren Holt had just made the most expensive, most profoundly ignorant mistake of his career. I walked out of that office without looking back, my heels striking the polished floor in quick, deliberate beats, a sound that echoed like the tick of a countdown clock I alone could hear. Rage wasn't what propelled me. It was cold, strategic calculation. Darren believed he'd dismissed dead weight. What he'd really done was sever the final, critical thread holding his $67 million platform together. At my desk, I performed the ritual. Clearing the personal from the professional, the framed photo of my niece, the stack of sticky notes with 2 a.m. code fragments. Piece by piece, the artifacts of a life inside these walls slipped into a cardboard box. People watched, of course. They always do. One junior engineer whispered. She couldn't adapt. Every syllable of that phrase was a hammer blow, yet I kept my expression smooth. They didn't realize the only reason they still had jobs was because I had adapted, over and over, building bridges between systems that would have collapsed years ago. HR arrived with a packet, eager to walk me through their tired choreography. "We'll need your badge, your laptop, your keys." I handed over each item without resistance. The laptop was still logged in. The architecture diagrams sat unsaved in a shared folder. Nobody asked questions. Nobody checked twice. As the HR rep escorted me, Darren strutted through the bullpen. "Dead weight gone," he proclaimed loudly. "Time to run leaner, faster, more agile." I reached the lobby, paused long enough to take one last look at the massive server display. Green lights blinked in neat rows, steady and loyal. I had built that display. I had named those nodes. One of them, Kismet, flickered yellow for a second before settling back to green, almost like it knew what was coming. When the glass doors swung shut behind me, I carried nothing but a box. And the kind of silence that carries its own weight. I knew exactly what Darren and his team would ignore next, because they already had. Months earlier, I'd stood in a cramped risk assessment room, walking executives through slides they barely glanced at. The title had been blunt: single point of failure, licensing core. I had warned them. I showed how every essential fallback script branched through a chain that depended on my dual-factor devices. I explained why redundancy had to be distributed. Darren wasn't there, but the old CTO had been. He'd clicked his pen, checked his watch, and dismissed it. "We'll revisit this post-launch." The slides were filed away into a folder labeled low priority. Walking across the plaza now, I could almost hear their voices brushing me off. We don't have the budget for that right now. It's stable, isn't it? We'll fix it later. Later is the coffin you build while pretending to save money. Darren would call it streamlining. The irony was brutal. He had just cut off his own air supply. The warning signs would start quietly. A delayed login in Toronto. A failed invoice sync in Denver. A timeout in Munich. Tier 1 support would chalk it up to a Chrome extension. Tier 2 would escalate it without context. By the time Darren heard about it, the room would already smell of smoke. And when they opened my transition folder, the one I had politely flagged in my final email, they'd roll their eyes. They'd see critical written in all caps, assume it was ego, and click away. They wouldn't read the line that mattered. Root certs tied to lane. Two-factor devices required. Reassign before September. My fingerprints were already woven into the architecture. All I had done was walk away. And sometimes walking away is the loudest warning of all. It took less than 3 days. By Thursday evening, a Canadian client flagged a strange login delay. By Friday morning, the smoke was spreading. 15 tickets had piled up overnight. Timeout errors, missing timestamps. Darren's favorite explanation, of course, was growing pains. He even said it out loud in the morning stand-up: hustle harder. Let's not catastrophize, but systems don't work themselves out. They rot from the inside until someone notices the smell. By noon, clients in Europe began reporting license expirations with wrong dates, forcing users out mid-session. One SaaS partner posted politely on LinkedIn, "Anyone else experiencing unexpected downtime?" That post was like the first flare shot into the night sky. Subtle but impossible to ignore. Meanwhile, a new intern stumbled onto something in the archives. A script marked LCONTROLSYS. He dropped a message in the support thread. "Does anyone know what this is?" Silence. Nobody dared admit they didn't understand the file. Nobody asked me because, of course, I wasn't there. And so the grenade sat untouched, pin half pulled. By the time the weekend began, the smoke had turned into sparks. Isolated complaints stretched across 3 continents. On LinkedIn, the whispers turned public. Darren, of course, waved it all away in a quick stand-up, clapping his hands like a coach before a game. Team, glitches happen. What matters is resilience. But sweat marked the collar of his shirt. That was when the intern spoke again, posting another message. "Are we sure this script isn't connected to licensing? It keeps referencing validation nodes." The truth was simple. I had been the only one who truly understood the loop, and now I was gone. Monday dawned like a storm front no one wanted to see coming. At 8:06 a.m., the first alarms screamed through the support channels. A healthcare client in Massachusetts reported their analytics dashboard refused to load. By 8:23 a.m., the panic spread west. The system wasn't lagging anymore, it was dead. Phones lit up like a Christmas tree wired to dynamite. Even the internal alert system had failed because it was chained to the same infrastructure module I had built 5 years earlier. In the war room, Darren Holt stood at the front, trying to conduct an orchestra with no instruments. "These things happen," he insisted, his voice cracking. Someone finally asked the question no one wanted to hear: "Where's Rebecca, the CTO?" The answer came with a grimace: "Off at a wellness retreat in Sedona. Phone free until Wednesday." By 9 o'clock, the war room was packed wall to wall. Monitors displayed error screens like tombstones. The flagship platform, valued at $67 million, was officially non-operational. Contracts guaranteed 99.9% uptime. That morning, the number wasn't even 20%. The forest fire had finally breached the skyline. At 9:15 a.m., CFO Margaret Delaney entered. She didn't waste a second. "Talk," she snapped, dropping her tablet onto the table with a thud. Darren stammered. "We're experiencing unexpected downtime, license validation issues. But our dev team is in." "In English?" Margaret cut him off. "Are clients locked out or not, Marcus?" "Yes, license server is offline," a developer admitted, his voice hoarse. Margaret's gaze narrowed. "Who has access?" The silence was suffocating. Finally, a systems admin named Brianna whispered, "It was built by Soren Lane." She didn't complete a full credential transfer before she left. Margaret leaned back slowly. "You thought that was temporary." Darren tried to jump in. "Legacy infrastructure, centralization. We're already building out redundancy." "Stop," Margaret said. "Is Soren Lane's name still in the system?" The junior developer's screen mirrored to the wall display. The green text froze on one line, locked. Last edit 5 months ago. Reset protocol dual token to FA. Device required, unavailable. The words hung in the air like a verdict. Darren let out a nervous laugh that cracked halfway through. She didn't. I mean, she wouldn't look like someone who could do this. Margaret turned her head sharply. Do what, Darren? Build a system that works or refuse to be treated like she didn't matter. Her glare burned through him until he shrank into his chair. Get legal, now. Start calculating breach exposure. The silence that followed was heavier than the outage itself. Jeremy, a junior sysadmin, stumbled onto the 6-month-old risk assessment. Single point of failure, licensing core, risk level unacceptable. She hadn't sabotaged them. She had warned them clearly, formally, in writing. Word spread faster than Slack. By mid-morning, whispers hissed through the building. Daniel Greer is back. The founder, pulled from vacation, walked through the glass atrium at 10:30 a.m. His voice was soft, surgical. Where's Soren's transition memo? Darren stammered. HR handled that. Daniel sliced through his defense. You fired the woman who built the licensing server. You're done. Security removed Darren. Daniel looked back at the monitors. Find her, he said quietly. And this time, pay her. The email arrived just before dawn. A clean proposal drafted by a boutique law firm. Soren would assist in the restoration, but on her terms. $1,500 per hour, full indemnity, and a written retraction of every statement labeling her incompetent. When Soren returned later that morning, she moved like someone who had memorized every bone in the skeleton. In the server room, a flash drive, a password, a scan. The heartbeat flickered back to green. She handed Daniel a slim hard drive, updated documentation, redundancy plan. Next time, she added, almost as an afterthought, promote from within. The elevator doors closed behind her. Daniel stood in the corridor, staring at the drive. The words that escaped his lips would echo through the halls for months. God help us. Who did we just fire?